So today I wanted to talk about Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Disney Plus's new original TV series based off of the books. So when this got announced, I think there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not this TV series would do the books justice, unlike the movies. And now that it's out, I think a lot of people are excited to see this world come back to life. Like with most adaptations, you can't expect every single thing to be added to the show or the movie. And given the amount of source material that they have to pick and choose from for this particular TV series, I think they're doing a really good job, which is what we will be getting into today. This is a comparison of episode 1 of the Percy Jackson TV series to the first 5 chapters of the book. I'm going to kind of do a thorough comparison, so if you're wanting to avoid spoilers, whether it's for the book or the TV show, then this might not be the place for you. But with that said, let's get started. So episode 1, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. So right out of the gate, we get Walker Scobell reciting the first page and a half of the book, which they kind of teased in the trailer. Of course, he doesn't recite the full introduction from the book, which is to be expected, especially since the book is Percy talking to you while you read the book. Kind of like this weird meta thing. So you can't exactly have that in a TV show for obvious reasons, right? But if you have read the book, then I think it's fun getting to hear Percy talk to you. And even if you haven't read the books, I think that's a good way to start the episode because then it brings the viewer in. So we start off with the field trip and Mr. Bruner leading the museum tour. One of the issues people had with the movie is in this scene in the movie, Percy has in his headphones and he's not really paying attention. That isn't exactly who Percy is. Now, in the show, we get Percy actually doing his schoolwork and everything, which is in the book. Now, instead of us getting Percy answering Mr. Bruner's questions about Kronos and the gods, we get instead a flashback of Percy being at the museum with his mom, Sally, and her explaining to him why she named him Percy. It's a really sweet scene, and I think it gives the viewer a good idea of the type of person Sally Jackson is before we even get to meet her. And then we see Percy getting picked on by Nancy Bobofit after this flashback, and Mr. Bruner gives him a pen, which will be relevant later, and his pencil breaking doesn't happen in the books, but you know, same thing. Also, while we're on the field trip, we get the interaction with Mrs. Dodds, who is Percy's pre-algebra teacher. In my opinion, this whole interaction, it's different from the book and honestly a little underwhelming when I first saw it. In the book, Mrs. Dodds takes Percy away from the group of students eating lunch and she brings him back into the museum. When she attacks Percy when they're alone, Mr. Bruner comes in and tosses the pen through the air so Percy can defend himself. In the show, Percy already has the pen and he just kind of stabs Mrs. Dodds while she's on top of him, and then she kind of disintegrates. Like I said, it's a little underwhelming, especially with Percy waking up and everyone saying, oh, there is no Mrs. Dodds at our school. And like I said, we can't have every single detail. I am a little curious as to why they changed it the way that they did, but overall it still accomplishes the same thing. But this then leads me into the other change. So after the whole interaction with Mrs. Dodds and Percy killing her, we don't get him overhearing Mr. Bruner and Grover talking about Mrs. Dodds, and we also don't get Grover accompanying Percy on the bus when Percy goes home, which means we also don't get Grover and Percy noticing the fates and Grover being like, please tell me they're not looking at you. Instead, in the show, we actually get Grover betraying Percy in a sense. So Percy doesn't even want to speak to him when Grover shows up later on in the show. All of that being said, again, I am curious as to why they changed it up in the way that they did, but I do think that they've woven everything together in a way that doesn't feel off like the movies did, if that makes any sense. Like, they have variations of the same thing while staying as true to the source material as they can. However, I will say one thing I love about the show is they make sure that people know that Percy just absolutely loves his mother. And having Sally Jackson sitting in the rain while thinking about Poseidon with Olivia Rodrigo's Logical playing in the background, perfect. And with Sally Jackson comes Gabe Ugliani. Now, I've seen some discourse about Gabe not being as abusive in the show as he was in the books, but I think that's either because, one, they're setting up to show just how terrible he is later on, or two, they're trying to tone it down a bit since this is a Disney show, and Disney seems to be doing that with some of their other movies and TV shows anyways. But I still think that they show that he's controlling and an overall bad guy from the start anyways, even if they don't have him asking Percy for money or commanding Sally to do things for him while he plays his poker game, or having Percy be nice to him so he and his mom can go to Montauk. With Gabe, I think we'll just have to wait and see what they do with his character, and I am excitedly waiting for Percy's revenge. Then a few other little things that I noticed was when at the cabin in the show, Sally already knows what happened with Mrs. Dodds, but in the book, she doesn't. In the show, the Minotaur knocks them off the road when Sally's trying to get Percy and Grover to Camp Half-Blood, but in the book, they are knocked off the road by Zeus's lightning bolt. Also, Sally grabs Percy's red jacket to try and buy him and Grover time so they can get to the property line, but in the book, Percy is the one that takes off his jacket to try and fight the Minotaur. But one other thing is at the very end, we still get Annabeth saying he must be the one. In the book, it's slightly different. She says he's the one, he must be, but honestly, if you want it more streamlined, saying he must be the one is perfectly fine. And finally, I think one thing to keep in mind is the fact that the book is told solely from Percy's point of view. We get all of his thoughts about everything, and you can't exactly do that in a TV show, but I think they're doing a good job at having us learn alongside Percy, because Percy has only been aware of this world for maybe 2 or 3 days, and he's still learning everything. So all of this being said, I like the route that they've taken with this adaptation. Well, that is all I have for episode 1. I'm currently playing catch up with videos since I've been spending time with my family recently, but I'm going to try and catch up as quickly as I can. I think they've casted the trio perfectly, and I really can't wait to see where they go with this. Episode 5 is coming out in a few days, but I will see you guys in my next video for episode 2. Bye!